Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about the CPA exam game plan, which deals with how to prepare for, how to sit for, and how to pass the uniform CPA exam. Now, I'd like to start out by letting people realize the CPA exam is not an IQ test, it's a test of discipline, which means if you study, you will pass. Our job is to motivate you in order to put the required amount of hours in order to accomplish your goal, which is to pass the CPA exam. Now, I'm Philipp of UWorld Roger CPA Review, and we at UWorld have helped over 2 million students prepare for high-stake exams, such as medical, nursing, legal, finance, and also CPA Review. Now, as far as CPA Review, we have over a 91% pass rate. That means that if you do what we tell you to do, you will accomplish that goal of passing the CPA exam. That 91% is the highest in the industry. We've also found that our students pass the CPA exam at about 3 times the rate of a non-UWorld Roger CPA Review student, especially because of the great products that we've created, one of which is called SmartPath. And that is basically using predictive technology, which helps test you and your knowledge to make sure that you are properly prepared to sit for and successfully pass the CPA exam. Now, why is it an exciting time to become a CPA? First of all, long-term job security. What that means is, as the economy picks up, you get through the pandemic and so forth, businesses start coming back. What is the first thing they need? A CPA in order to keep track of all their finances. So, first of all, it is awesome as far as job security. You have great flexibility. You become a trusted advisor to your clients, but also to your family and friends. I have family and friends that come to me and look to me as a consultant, for example, in getting information in order to help them in their individual or business lives as well. We're also at the forefront of the latest technology, and you'll see that as we talk about some of the upcoming changes to the CPA exam, especially in audit and BEC, where we talk about IT information technology. You also get to enjoy a work-life balance. And a work-life balance means that I'm going to go in there, I'm going to have a career that I love and is always changing, so you're always learning. In other words, you're not going to get bored, that's for sure, because there's always new accounting laws, tax laws, and so forth. But also, you get a great salary. In other words, I think they've done a study and they said the average CPA makes it about $1 million more over their lifetime than a non-CPA. So right there alone, that should be enough motivation to help you put in the hours it takes to become a CPA. Now, when we talk about how to pass the CPA exam, we like to say, how do you get from point A to point CPA? And that's known as the 4 E's that we're going to talk about momentarily. And those 4 E's include the education, and that's the education requirements. What does it take for me to qualify to sit for the CPA exam? What is the CPA exam itself? We'll talk about something called the ethics exam. We've got to make sure you're ethical. And then also the work experience required. And once I've got all that, let's submit the paperwork so I can in fact obtain my CPA exam license. Now, as far as the national educational requirements, and this is an important point that every state is a little bit different. So please go to our website, our UWorld website, and look at your particular individual state so you'll understand what in fact the requirements are for your individual state. But in general, you need a bachelor's degree from an accredited university in order to sit for the exam. Generally, it's about 120 to 150 semester units. Now, in many states, you just need 120 to sit, but 150 to get certified. In other states, you may need 150, which is like a master's degree, in order to sit and also to get certified. So again, that's why it's important to understand your individual state's requirements. You also need, in that degree, a certain number of accounting and business courses. So for example, you might need a certain number of courses, 24 semester, 36 quarter units, and so forth. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's important to realize that every state's a little bit different. So please take a few moments, go to our website. We have it listed in detail, state by state by state. Now, a lot of people sit back and go, I can't wait to become a CPA. Well, people, what is the CPA exam? Well, there are 4 parts to the CPA exam. Each part is 4 hours in length. Let's see, 4 times 4, 16 hours. You already passed the first part of the exam. So what that means is it's 4 4-hour exams. You can sit for these parts in any order you choose. And a lot of people will say, well, what order should I take it in? And I'll talk about that momentarily as well. But let's first start out by saying, well, what is on the CPA exam? The 4 parts are FAR, financial accounting and reporting, auditing, regulation, and business environment and concepts known as BEC. In the FAR or financial accounting and reporting exam, that includes your intermediate 1, intermediate 2, advanced government and nonprofit accounting squeezed into a fun-filled 4-hour adventure. So that is FAR, and that will probably take by far the most hours to prepare for because the book itself and the content is very thick. There's a lot of material, a lot of detail, but it's actually kind of a fun part to study for. Another part of the exam is auditing and attestation. Auditing involves, and most of you have probably had an audit class, and if not, don't worry because we will teach you what you need to know to pass the exam. But that includes planning the audit, internal controls, substantive testing, IT, audit reports, reviews, compilations. So all of that is wrapped up into a 4-hour exam. Regulation is also 4 hours. That includes tax, law, and ethics. Now, as far as taxes, that makes up the majority of the regulation exam. That would involve things like individual taxes, S corps, partnerships, C corporations. It involves things like your partnerships. So all of that is part of your regulation exam and part of that tax portion. Then finally, we have BEC, Business Environment and Concepts, also 4 hours. That includes economics, micro, macro, corporate governance, internal control, enterprise risk management, financial management, budgeting, our favorite cost managerial, right? It's back. So that's all part of the BEC exam. Now, one of the things you'll see as you're studying for the exam is all of these parts are interrelated. What that means is a lot of the stuff that you'll talk about in one part. So for example, let's say you'll talk about that in FAR. And let's say we'll be talking about leases. Well, then you go to the auditing portion, and there we talk about, okay, in financial accounting, how do you account for the lease? In auditing, how do you audit that lease? How do you make sure that they accounted for the lease properly, whether it's income statement, balance sheet, and so forth? So there's a lot of interrelation that you're going to see there as you're studying. And that's why, as I tell my students, the first exam just feels, oh my gosh, kind of overwhelming. Then the second exam kind of builds upon, and then the third and so on. Because way back in the day, when I took the exam, when I was your age, and I sound like your parents, but back in my day, we had to take all 4 parts simultaneously at the same time. The thing that was great about that is when you studied for it, you really understood how auditing tied into financial accounting, which tied into your tax, into your M1 reconciliation, and so on. So you could see how the things were interrelated. Nowadays, most people study for a part, take a part, pass a part, study for a part, pass a part. So by the third or fourth time, or the third or fourth part rather, you start to go, oh, now I see how it's interrelated. So it really starts to fall into place. So it's important that you realize, again, what's on the exam, but also how all these parts are interrelated as well. Now, as far as the weighting on the exam, when we look at audit, FAR, and reg, all 3 of those exams are similar in that they're 4 hours, and it's 50% of the exam is multiple choice, 15% is task-based simulations. So multiple choice, I'll show you examples. It could be like, 4 choices, A, B, C, D type choice. And then this task-based simulation could be a research question, or it could be a problem where you're actually filling out documents. It could be matching type questions. So that's your task-based simulation. With BEC, now remember, BEC was economics, financial management, cost managerial, IT, and so on. BEC is 50% multiple choice, 35% task-based simulations, and 15% written communication or essays. Notice that BEC is the only exam with written communication, and audit, FAR, and reg all have a research question, whereas BEC does not. So that's the way it's set up. Now, I always tell students the CPA exam is not an IQ test. What does it take to pass the exam? A score of 75 or better. So if you get a 75 or better, woohoo, I'm a CPA. Woo, raise the roof, right? Now, if I got a 75 in all my college classes, yes, I'd be a CPA, but it feels like you're a C average student. Well, that's what C in CPA stands for, average. Now, that doesn't mean you should go to the partner in the firm and go, you're a CPA, you must be average. No, what it means is it's not an IQ test, but you need a little bit about a lot of information. So it's kind of like a river, an inch deep and a mile wide. So we've got to be able to go through the material, and you need to understand it. So in a minute and a quarter, you can jump from leases, bonds, pensions, deferred taxes, contingent liabilities, your brain, and that's where the repetition comes in. That's also where our smart path, predictive technology software comes in, because it really helps you to understand the concepts. Plus, the way that we've written our solutions is awesome in that it gives you a diagram, and we tell you not only why A is right, but why B, C, and D are wrong. That's how you learn the material. Because I like to tell my students that maybe this time the answer is A, but if I change one or two of the words in the question, it changes from answer A to answer C. So you need to understand, because a lot of, I have little kids and they're like, just tell me the answer. You need to know not only why it's this the correct answer, but why the others are incorrect, because next time you do the problem, those may switch and become the correct ones. Now we're looking at something called the AI CPA Blueprints. And the blueprints, those are the content framework for the CPA exam. And this is put out by the AI CPA. Basically what this does is it maps out the skills and the tasks that are going to be tested on your exam. And this is something nice because it helps us to prepare materials, but it also helps you to prepare for the exam, because it's based on something called, that all your college professors use, Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives. And what that says is, let's look at all the different ways that people learn. So what it says here is we're going to look at things like remembering and understanding. We're going to have application. We're going to have something called analysis, and we're also going to have something called evaluation. And what that means basically is that as we look at the questions, you'll see here that it breaks it down and it says, okay, remembering and understanding, application, analysis, evaluation, how is this particular area getting tested on the CPA exam? So with the AI CPA blueprint here, this is for audit, for example, and you'll see, for example, under analysis, that says, okay, this one topic will be tested via analysis. You'll see another one there under sampling that it's marked under remembering and understanding. Now, how is this benefiting us? First of all, with remembering and understanding, it tells us those kind of questions will be multiple choice. It tells us if it's an application, if it's checked under application, it could be multiple choice or a form of a problem called a TBS, task-based simulation, which I'll expand on momentarily. If it's checked under analysis, that says it's going to be a problem, a task-based simulation. And then finally, for evaluation, that only exists in audit, not the other three parts, because that tells you it's going to be a TBS or a task-based simulation. And it says you're going to do this problem where you basically have to draw some sort of conclusion. So the beauty of these AI CPA blueprints, which again, the AI CPA gives to us, and then it helps us to show you how and the ways that different content will be tested. Again, remembering and understanding tells you it's multiple choice, application, multiple choice, or a problem. Analysis is a problem, evaluation is a problem, but only for audit. Now, as I said, what are the kinds of questions we're going to see? Well, you've got multiple choice type questions, task-based simulations, which include something called a DRS, a document review simulation, which I'll show you momentarily. You'll also have research type questions, and then finally written communication, which are only in the BEC exam, not in any of the other three. So for example here, you'll see a multiple choice question. And with this multiple choice type question, basically what it has is there's 4 different choices there you'll see. Now, maybe it's A, B, C, D, or maybe there's just 4 different choices. But generally, we set this up so it looks exactly like what you're going to see at the CPA exam. You'll see a countdown clock there. You'll see information and so forth where you're going through the question. But here you'll see the different choices. So that's typically multiple choice. Now, recalling earlier, we said about 50% of audit, FAR, and reg are multiple choice, 50% of BEC is multiple choice. So that's 50% tested this way, which tests you on what? Remembering and understanding, as well as application. Then you've got here something called a task-based simulation. And in this particular type of problem, you'll see here where they're going through and asking you to pick from lists. So when you click on it, it opens up a list, and then you pick that item and it bubbles it in. So it's a type of problem. It's a more involved question than a multiple choice, for example, but they're still giving you different options to choose from. You'll also see here a DRS, or a document review simulation. This one's a little bit more difficult. Basically, they give you a list of exhibits, and when you click on the exhibit, it opens up like a spreadsheet or a board of directors meeting information, or a letter from the president, or something from the bank, or a confirmation. So it opens up some kind of exhibit or resource document. And this here is kind of like in the real world. It's kind of a real world application. If you were to go out and do an audit and the client says, here's my shoebox full of receipts, You need to be able to go through those exhibits and say, this is relevant to the exam problem, therefore we're going to need it. This is irrelevant. It's just there to throw me off and ruin my career. But that's the purpose of this DRS type problem. So it's a more involved problem. A problem like this, instead of a multiple choice taking 1.25 minutes to 1.5 minutes, you might have 10 to 15 minutes to work on a problem like this. So it's important to kind of review these in advance. It's a great way of learning the material, but also getting comfortable with how the questions are going to be asked. Another type is written communication, and this is on BEC only. Basically, what they're having you do is to write an essay. You need a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's based on, it says here, organization. So they want to make sure you're not like having bullet points, but it's clearly organized. It's clear, concise, complete, use of standard English, appropriateness for the reader. All of those are the things they're looking for. They want to make sure that you've got examples, definitions, right? Staying on topic. So all of those things are important. So I always tell my students, and we'll go through these in class, is it's important to see the key words and repeat those keywords back to them in your solution. You also want to make sure that the grammar, the punctuation, word usage, all of those are correct and complete as well. All of that shows the examiners that you understand the material. So that's the way that the exam's set up. Those are the kinds of problems and questions you can expect to see. Now, as far as more specifically the exam structure, you'll see here for the 4 different parts, on each exam, there's what we call 5 testlets. And the testlets are, 2 of them are multiple choice, and then you'll have the other 3 for audit, FAR, and reg. The other 3 will be task-based simulations. And those task-based simulations, as I said, could be a document review simulation or a bubble in the item or pick it from a list, that kind of problem you'll see. For BEC, as we said, 50% is multiple choice, but then 35% was task-based simulations. Now in audit, FAR, and reg, you could have about 8 task-based simulations. In BEC, generally, you'll have about 4 of those task-based simulations and 3 essays or written communication. Now, one of the things that we like to work through is we need to work on great time management. So you'll see here how we've broken it down. So for example, in FAR, you'll see testlet 1 has 33 multiple choice. You've got about 45 minutes. Now, if you do the math, you'll see you've got like 1.25 minutes per question. That's not a lot of time. So obviously in the multiple choice question where they're testing remembering and understanding or application, what you want to do there is you want to make sure that you're comfortable with the material because you've got very little time to get through it. But again, that question can't get into too much detail on the lease because you've only got 1.25 minutes. Where do they get into the detail? Later on in the task-based simulations. So you'll see there testlet 1, testlet 2. Testlet 3 has 2 task-based simulations, and we suggest about 30 minutes. 30 minutes for 2 questions, that's about 15 minutes a question, so figure about 15. Now remember I said you have a countdown clock on the computer because you're not allowed to bring a watch or anything like that. So it's you against the clock. So part of the exam and passing the exam is good time management. So we will work on that together in class, but the key is to realize how much time I've got per multiple choice, how much time I have per task-based simulation. Then you'll see halfway through, and the halfway through means you should be about 2 hours into the exam. You get a 15-minute break for free. Now, when I took the exam, when I was your age, they didn't give us a break. Right? I took it in California, in Los Angeles at USC, at the convention center, and there were about 6,000 people in the same room as I taking the exam. We were sitting in these desks facing straight forward, and that was it. And you could take a break, but the clock kept running. Now what they said is you know what, it's not fair to the students. Let's make it a little more balanced. Let's give them a little bit of time. So they give you a free 15-minute break. That means that when you finish that testlet 3 with the 2 task-based simulations, at that point it says, do you want to take a break? Sure, say yes. You've got 15 minutes to stretch, get up, leave. If you leave the room, you got to get back in line and check back in. You've got to be seated within 15 minutes because in 15 minutes, your clock will start running again. Then you've got your testlets 4 and 5, for example, and in FAR, we're looking at, you've got 3 task-based simulations and then 3 more. Now notice here we say 60 minutes for 3 is about 20 minutes a question because these are generally more detailed. These are probably going to be more of that document review simulation where you've got a variety of exhibits that you've got to open, look at, read, and see if it's something that's relevant to the exam. But what I want you to understand is the flow of the exam. So you'll notice each one has your 5 task-based simulations. You'll also notice that for each one as well, that each one has 5 testlets rather. And you'll notice here as far as the timing, it's a little different because each exam has a different number of multiple choice. For example, FAR has 33 times 2, 66. Audit has 36 times 2, 72 questions. Regulation has the most, 38 times 2, 76. And then BEC has the least, which is about 62. Now you'll notice BEC, as I'll mention in a moment, you'll probably want to do last, and it's probably the one you'll have the least amount of issues with as far as timing because it has fewer multiple choice and fewer task-based simulations. The other thing I want to mention is you are allowed to take a break after every testlet. So after each testlet, it says, do you want to take a break? But remember, if you say yes, you can get up and do whatever, but the clock keeps running. After testlet 3, that's your free break where you get, hey, I've got 15 minutes free, woohoo, I think I'll take it. As far as the way the exam is set up, what they do is they want to make sure the exam is always up to date. That means they will go out there and they will talk to the practitioners and the professors at the different universities, and they want to see what's happening in the universities, what's happening in the real world, and they want to make sure the AICPA CPA exam is on topic. That means that they're always updating it. Now, in this particular case, we have huge updates that are coming right around the corner. July 2021, there are several expected changes, especially in 2 parts, audit and BEC. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you're studying for the exam and you can sit for it before July 1st, you may want to nail out audit and BEC. Why? Because then you don't have to learn any of the new changes. Now, I've listed here what they're adding because there's a few things they're adding and there's a few things they're taking away. So, for example, in this case, they're adding to the CPA exam and audit and BEC things like digital mindset. And what they're looking at really here is technology. And the reason is because, as we all know, technology is becoming more and a more important part of all of our individual lives as well as our business lives as well. So with technology, it produces a significant amount of data. Now, the data needs to be what? It needs to be controlled, understood, and verified. So when we look at it that way, we say, okay, what do we need to understand with digital mindset? We need to understand how the data is structured, how to extract the data and use the data, intellectual property rules and rights, data governance, which is a new section itself as well, and judgment. So that tells us, okay, that's what they're adding, digital mindset. Data analytics is important as well, because that is when we're analyzing data to draw conclusions that will help us to reveal different trends. So we analyze the data analytics, because we're trying to see the trends. Where are sales coming from? What are different costs? How are they related? And things like that. Finally, the technological impacts. How does it impact the business processes, internal control, the general and application controls? And we'll talk about that, especially in auditing. So those are some of the things that they're going to be adding to the exam in July 2021. Those are the expected changes. So what does that mean again? Standing here today, if it's before July 2021, maybe you can squeeze audit and BEC and take it in before. If it's after July 2021, don't worry about it, because now all that new information is already included in there. And I'll talk about, okay, which order should I sit for the exam momentarily. Other changes, things they're deleting, right? Woo, they're getting rid of. One of them is IFRS. Now, wait a sec. International Financial Reporting Standards, that was huge years ago, and we thought it was going to take over the world. And guess what? People still like US GAAP more. Therefore, what does it mean? They're taking IFRS off the exam. The other thing that they're removing is estate taxation. Now, in tax, for years I've been teaching estates, trust, and all that. All of that's going away except for gift tax. So gift tax, you can tell your parents, hey, you're allowed to give me $15,000 each. That's $30,000 married filing joint. If mom and dad are still married, great. Just give me 30 grand a year. Thank you very much. It avoids estate tax and so on. The things and the reasons why they change and take stuff away and add stuff is they're trying to test on what a second year CPA would do in public accounting. So if they're trying to see what a second year CPA does, maybe they're not going to be working with estates and trusts as much, but you gift tax, your client's going to have questions about gift tax. Things that they were considering eliminating but decided to keep would include state and local government, and that's in financial accounting and reporting. We talk about that. Also, the written communications, because those are exclusively in BEC, but there was a time where they said, you know what? I don't know if we still need to have them write essays. They decided, you know what? We do, so we'll keep it in the BEC exam. So that's kind of the way that it's set up. Now, as far as the suggested order, generally speaking, as far as the prep time, the most to the least. What's going to take the most amount of time? FAR, financial accounting reporting, because there's so much material in there. The second one's probably regulation, which is tax law and ethics, because again, a lot of information. Auditing will take a significant amount, but probably a little less than regulation, and then BEC even less. So if you were to put the books next to each other, FAR is the biggest, then reg, then audit, then BEC is really small. So our suggestion is to go in that order. However, let's say you want to sit for the exam in the near future, and let's say there's changes coming up, for example, in audit, or let's say an audit and BEC. Maybe you want to sit for audit and BEC first before those changes occur. If you're indifferent, then we suggest do FAR, then do reg or audit, then do reg or audit, finish up with BEC. However, let's say you just finished, you just graduated school, and you had an amazing auditing teacher. Oh my gosh, he or she was wonderful, and I understood it, and it's clear, concise. You know what? Before I forget everything I just learned, let me do that one first, which is fine too. So maybe there's a part you feel better about, tax or audit or FAR. Start with that one first then, because part of passing the exam is just feeling confident, right? It's just having self-confidence. So getting that first part knocked out, getting a 75 or above and saying, woo, I passed that part, then you go, you know what? This is doable. I can do this. And as I said, if you study, you will pass. Our job's to motivate you to want to keep studying in order to pass the exam. So that would be the suggestion as far as the order. Now, once you pass a part, you have 18 months to pass the rest. What does that mean? It means I take a part, I pass that part. That means that I pass the part, boom, your 18-month clock starts running. That clock starts running from the date that you sat for the exam. So if I sat for the exam July 5th and whatever, 2028, that means, boom, I passed FAR. I have 18 months from that date to pass the rest. Now, that's also why we suggest you start with FAR, because FAR will probably take you longer to prepare for. So the date of the timing of the 18 months doesn't start until you sit for the exam. So you study, take FAR, pass FAR, take FAR, the clock starts running. Now I just have those other 3 parts to pass within 18 months. What if I don't pass within 18 months? The good news is you don't lose everything, you just lose that first part. So it's an 18-month window. So I pass a part, don't pass, and then 18 months goes by, you just lose that first one. So as long as it's an 18-month window. So you'll see here, I passed July 5th, I've got till January 2030, for example, to pass the last part. If you don't lose everything. In my day, if you didn't pass it, you lost everything. You had to start all over. Now you don't have to. So that's what the 18-month rolling window talks about. Now, as far as making sure you're exam ready, what do I need to do? Because I can feel the energy and enthusiasm. I can feel it through the screen. You're saying, Raj, I'm motivated. This is my time. I'm going to become a CPA. How do I do it? First, enroll in your CPA review course, which hopefully is the UWorld Rogers CPA review course. Apply for the exam with the Board of Accountancy in your state. So you'll apply for the exam, you fill out the application, send in the information, have your transcript sent over and so on. Once they approve all that, then you receive your NTS, which is a notice to schedule. That means now I can sign up and pay for the parts I want to sit for. Every state's a little bit different. Some states say whatever part you pay for, you have to sit for within 6 months. Some are 9 months, some are 12 months. Let's say you're in a state where it's 6 months. Maybe I'm not going to sit for all 4 and 6 months, then only pay for the 2 or 3 parts you want to sit for in the next 6 months, because you can always add more parts later. Then you receive this thing called a notice to schedule. That means then I'm going to contact someone called Prometrics, which I'll talk about in a minute, and I'm going to book my CPA exam itself. So that's called your NTS, your notice to schedule. Now, we have a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, 12-month study plan, and we'll set up a study schedule with you. Now, let's say I said I want to pass all 3 parts in 3 months. So what does that look like? Or in other words, how much of my life do I have to give up? Well, first of all, you'll see here for FAR, we're saying, okay, you've got about 4 weeks. Those are the green color. Then you go to audit, about 3 weeks. Then you go to reg, about 3 weeks. Then you go to BEC, about 2 weeks. So that means that I'm going to be putting in many hours every day. If I'm working full time, that's great. But when I get home at night, I'm going to have to study. On the weekends, I'm going to have to study because I'm trying to squeeze it into 3 months. But you don't have to. You can do, some people graduate college and go, I want to get it done before I start working. Some people go, I'm already working. Let me knock one out every 2 months. So that's fine too. But again, we will work with you on that 3, 6, 9, or 12-month study schedule, whatever works best for you in your life. Now, Get your life in order. What does that mean? It means, first of all, build a support system. That means sit down with your family, your friends, your coworkers, and let them know, hey, I'm going to be going through a lot in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So I need you to be understanding, honey, I can't do dishes anymore. I'm not going to be taking, and so on. The point is, build a support system because you want people on your side. Because as I said, part of passing this exam is just confidence, is having the support that you need. Put it in your calendar. That means make sure that you've marked down when you're going to study. I'm doing that 3-month plan. Every night I'm going to study. On the weekends I'm going to study. I'll take a day off every so often and so on. But you want to clear yourself of any of these distractions. They've also done studies, and they found out that if you start studying at the same time every day, it takes you less time to get into that great study mode. And I found the same thing. If you say, okay, I'm going to get home from work, eat a quick dinner, and start studying at 7 o'clock, the first day it'll take you till 7:20 to get going, and then 7:15, and then eventually at 7 I start, and at 7:02 I'm into it. So they always say set up a study schedule and try to study at the same time each day, and then maybe the weekends start even earlier. That's a great way to get that. Then schedule your exams, and then again customize your study planner. And they're fully customizable, so you can adjust it accordingly for your individual study needs. Now, when you're ready to take the exam, you go to a testing center called Prometrics. And Prometrics is located all over the country, all over the world. That's why the CPA exam has gone global. So if you were working overseas for a client, you could actually sit for the exam in that country as well. Now, with Prometrics, this is where they give all kinds of exams, right? GMATs, GREs, and all these exams are given here at Prometrics, one of them also being the CPA exam. So you show up. You have to bring a valid ID. You've got to bring your notice to schedule. You've got to bring like a credit card with your name on it. You want to make sure everything matches. Let's say you did something crazy, like you fell in love, got married, and changed your name. Well, I applied for the exam under one name, so my notice to schedule has one name, but my driver's license and credit card has a different name. You got to fix that. Everything has to match, so you need to bring that with you. Then you get in line, you put everything in a locker, and then you get in line, you check in, fingerprint you, and you sit down, and then you start the exam. Now it mentions here, sign out for scheduled or unscheduled breaks. Your scheduled break is after that third testlet, you get a 15-minute break. Unscheduled means in between testlets, I want to take a break, you can, but remember the clock keeps writing. Now, what's prohibited? You can't bring notes with you. You can't bring your cell phone with you. Every time they catch people doing this, they kick you out, and your exam is basically you failed. You can't talk to others. We know that. If you bring a jacket in with you to the room, you have to wear it the entire time. I had one student who was stuck underneath an air conditioning vent. First of all, I would go and ask if I could be moved. If not, you're stuck there for 4 hours with the wind blowing on you. So I tell students dress comfortably, maybe wear a t-shirt and then put a sweatshirt over it that you can zip shut if it's cold or leave open. But you cannot take it off and hang it over the chair. That is verboten, right? That's forbidden. It says here soft earplugs, right? No wires or cords because you're going to go, hey, Roger, what's the answer? No, but you can bring those because it helps because you're sitting in a room looking in your cubicle at your screen and the person next to you might be reading out loud, bring valid government ID. And you're like, ugh. So I would do that. The other thing is sometimes when you go to the CPA exam at Prometrics, you're not supposed to have a calculator. We have an on-screen calculator, but they don't remember which exam you're taking. So a lot of times they'll say, would you like a calculator? Yes, I would. Take it with you. Okay, if they offer it, great, take it with you. But that's called Prometrics. You could also sign up to do a walkthrough before your exam. If you want to go a couple of days or weeks ahead of time, go through there and kind of see what it looks like so you get a feel for it. We found in life, the more comfortable you are, the less stressed you're going to be. So if it makes you more comfortable to go take the public transportation there in advance, so you know how much time it takes, because you don't want to be late. You need to get there early to check in, sign in, and then sit down and take your exam. So again, these are things that you can work through in order to help make this experience a little less stressful. As far as that, we talked about, okay, you need certain educational to sit. Here's what the exam is like. Here's the application process. How do I get certified? And that's kind of like your national licensure requirements. And as I said, to sit for the exam, maybe in some states I need 120 units, but to get certified, that's where I need 150. So in order to get certified, you need the bachelor's degree, which I needed to sit. You need 150 semester or 225 quarter, and it talks about at least 24 in certain classes like accounting and business classes. And then you generally need work experience. Most states, you need 1 year of work experience. Some are different. When I took the exam years ago, we only needed 120 units, but 2 years of experience. Then they changed it and said, okay, 120 to sit, $150 to get certified, but 1 year of experience. So again, every state's different. I encourage you to check out our website where we have a huge, complete list of all the states, all the requirements, and so forth. But you want to know the requirements to sit as well as the requirements to get certified. There's also something called the ethics exam, right? How ethical. And the ethics exam is basically a take-home exam. And in the olden days, I had a book, and you go through the book, and all the questions and the solutions are in the book. Nowadays, it's an online exam, but basically it's about 40 questions. It's self-study. It's an open book. You need to get at least a 90% or above in order to pass, which means 90% of 49 times 4 is 36. You can only miss 4 questions. But all the solutions, all the answers are in the book. You just have to do a little bit of research. If you don't pass it, you can retake it again. But the point is that's called the ethics exam. And I always joke it's the one exam everybody cheats on, right? How ethical, right? Hey, Rod, which ethics exam did you get? What's the answer? But they're basically very specific questions like, let's say about independence. Your brother's wife's father is the CEO of this company. Can you do the audit? Well, I don't remember. That's what you'll have to look up to see. So it's kind of like stuff that's on part of the audit exam as well, but these are more specific, more detailed questions just to make sure you understand independence, objectivity, and so forth. Now, as I said earlier, the road from A to CPA includes those 4 E's, which we talked about: education, the exam itself, the ethics exam, the work experience you need. The last thing is, okay, I've got the experience. Now let's submit my paperwork and become a CPA. Now, as far as the CPA exam and as far as your life in general, the time to invest in yourself is what? Is now. That means now is the time to put in the hours. That means become a CPA, putting in the hours, improving upon your career. Don't put your future on hold. Don't keep putting it off. Now is the time, especially if you're working from home more. You have a little bit more flexibility, less travel time, and so forth. Now is the time to make that next step, the next level. As I said, the average CPA makes about $1 million a year over their lifetime than a non-CPA. Use that as motivation to say, now's the time. Now I'm going to get through it. Invest in yourself. The beautiful thing about this too is because we give you an unlimited repeat, in other words, you can take it forever. That means that you may as well start studying sooner than later because your materials are constantly updated. So what I suggest is while you're in college, that's the best time to sign up for our course. Use our wonderful materials and lectures to help you in school. And I found that students in their senior year, for example, that are using our course and using our materials, it helps them to get a better grade in school because they have a better understanding. Because university professors have a difficult job. They've got to distinguish between an A and a C student. Our job is to help you pass a standardized exam. And that's why it's so important that we can set up and teach you the material in a way that's understandable, that flows from step A to Z, and it'll help you not only in school, but it'll help you on the CPA exam itself. You'll see we have these wonderful proven results, as I said, about our 91% pass rate, whereas the national average is about 48%. And here you'll see a testimonial, and we've got hundreds of these on our site from students, or thousands of them, of students who've said, I love your course, I love your product, I love the way that it's set up, I love how it's fully featured and so on, that I can study anywhere, anytime. So again, you be the judge, watch some free demos to compare because the courses are all different. The highest quality in CPA exam prep, what does that mean? Fully featured mobile app. And I just got a great testimonial for someone who said he loved our app because he could study anywhere, anytime. He could do sample exams anywhere, anytime. He could take notes. He could write flashcards and so on. So fully featured mobile app. Same time-saving technology. That's our Smart Path. Smart Path is when you're doing the questions, it keeps track of where you're strong and where you're weak. So let's say it'll say, you know what, you've got a 90% in this section. Move on. Go to the section where you've got a 42%. So it will push you because a lot of us tend to say, oh, I love accounts receivable, percentage of credit sales, aging power. I'll just study this. And we know it backwards and forwards. But then this stuff, governmental accounting, I'm a little, foggy on. This will tell you where you're strong, where you're weak, and it's based on how many questions you've done, what percent correct you're getting, how much time you're spending. All of those data analytics will be kept, and you can do research and see where you're strong, where you're weak, where you need to do the work. Industry's best materials. We have a huge staff that works on the content of the materials. We hire college professors, PhDs, practitioners, and so all the questions, the solutions, the materials are well written, thoroughly reviewed and so on in order to make sure that it's exactly what you need and it's summarized, it's simplified, it focuses you in on the key information. That's why students like to use our materials in college, because the books, your intermediate books this thick, and it spends 50 pages explaining leases that we can do in 7 to 10 pages. So we cut out the fat, focus you in what you need. As I said, you have free updates and lifetime access. So if you start studying in college, you have access to our course forever, and anytime things are updated, those updates are automatically put onto the online course, and we get you the updates as well. So you can see those updates whether they're in the materials or whether they're in the book itself. As far as financing, discounts, all of those things are available. You can bill it to your firm as well. So there's all these different things that are available. The key is for you to decide that this is the time for me. I need to enroll today. I need to prepare for the next chapter of my life, the next chapter of my career. And you too, if you study, you will pass. You too will become a CPA. Thank you for your time, and study hard.